Well, we will get started. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us this morning, bright and early on a Thursday. Really appreciate everyone being on. We got a really tight agenda today. A lot of stuff to cover, so we're going to get right into it. Thank you to our panelists for being here. I'll turn the mic over to Mr. Jeff Miller to give a little bio, the bios of our speakers, and then we'll go right into it.
All right, good morning. Thank you, everyone. I don't know about the rest of you. I recently turned 50. I used to just hop out of bed and be ready to roll. And now I kind of roll out of bed and I kind of have to re-stretch some things, my neck, my shoulders, and my mouth doesn't seem to move as much as my mind does anymore. It's a weird thing getting old. There's some I'm going to digress here for a second. Admit all here. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Zachary, is that all right?
I can handle that part.
Awesome. All right. Well, this morning we have quite the topic with the climate action plan the city is working on. I think it's going to be really interesting. Full disclosure, I'm kind of a dummy when it comes to this sort of thing, so I'm looking forward to learning some things myself. And before we get going, I've got just a couple little bios here that I want to just read, make sure that everyone knows who our speakers are this morning. So again, first and foremost, thank you all for joining us this morning. I think this is a great topic and opportunity to learn some good things here. With us this morning, we have Patricia Farrell. Patricia is the Climate Action Plan Manager for the City of Salem. She is also the Parks and Natural Resources Planning Manager for the city. She, excuse me, she has worked for both the private and public sector and has been with the city since 2003. She has a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's degree in landscape architecture, both from the University of Virginia. Thank you, Patricia, for being here. And real quickly, I think that I saw Alicia. Is it pronounced Alicia? I want to make sure that I say it correctly.
Alicia Traynor.
Alicia Traynor. Okay, I apologize.
There she is.
Good morning, Alicia. Thanks for joining us. Alicia Traynor is an environmental policy manager for PGE. In her role, she focuses on environmental, climate, and energy policies and regulations. She develops policy initiatives, performs stakeholder relations, monitors issues, and advocates for PGE positions in Oregon, California, and Washington, as well as on the federal level. Alicia has been working on environmental policy and regulatory issues.
Jeff, I think you got muted there.
I did. Little window popped up, said I got muted. Starting off strong, I'll tell you. I'm just going to go ahead and jump back in here where it says Alicia has been working on environmental policy and regulatory issues for more than a decade, during which time she has become an expert in carbon markets, greenhouse gas reduction strategies, and the Federal Clean Air Act. Alicia is a regular presenter on decarbonization issues to energy, environmental, and customer groups and elected officials across the country. She holds a Bachelor of Science from the University of Oregon, Oregon State University, excuse me. Holy cow, that's a faux pas, isn't it? All the Duck and Beaver fans are cussing me right now. Good morning. Connor Wrighton. Connor Wrighton serves as Northwest Natural's Government and Community Affairs Manager for the Mid-Willamette Valley. He has been in this role for nearly 2 years, and he attempts to fill the large shoes of the former chamber president, Bruce Anderson, which we all know and enjoy. I sure missed Bruce. I was a big fan. Since graduating from the University of Portland, Connor has worked on several statewide political campaigns as a staffer for an Oregon senator in Washington, D.C., and in public affairs role at a Portland-based firm. He entered the energy industry in 2016 in a government affair role with Northwest Gas Association. In his role, he led advocacy of efforts to reduce our region's climate footprint through the use of emerging gas technology. In service to this goal, he founded the Northwest Alliance for Clean Transportation in 2017 to advocate alongside the Northwest Gas Association for replacing medium and heavy-duty diesel trucks and buses with natural gas vehicles. His wife, Molly, is a teacher here in Salem Kaiser, and they are joined by their 2-year-old daughter, Elin. And Connor, I hope I pronounced that correct. Good morning, and thank you for showing up here, Connor. Tom Anderson is with us. I saw Tom this morning. Good morning, Tom. Tom was born to a minister's family in Chicago, got his undergraduate degree in poli-sci history and English at the University of Illinois, came west for law school at the University of Oregon, and except for 3 years in Vermont, has remained here ever since. He has served in city council since 2015. In his paying job, he has been a trial lawyer for 45 years in both government and private practice. For the last 35 years, scrolled up, went too far. In the last 35 years, he has represented small and large businesses and government units in defense of workers' compensation claims. He is married to Jessica Maxwell, an author and magazine journalist, and has 2 boys, one a lawyer in Portland and one a doctor on the Oregon coast. He is an avid bicycle rider, both around town and long distance, including across the country with his boys, and a competitive masters swimmer. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know. Congratulations, that's sweet. Pre-COVID, he and Jessica traveled extensively across the US and overseas. He lives in a Clarence Smith designed home and collects local art. Awesome, thanks, Tom. Vanessa's here this morning. Vanessa Nordic is 3rd-generation Salem lawyer and a senior assistant attorney general at the Oregon Department of Justice. In 2018, Vanessa was made history as the youngest ever elected president of the Oregon State Bar, a unified bar of approximately 19,000 lawyers and judges statewide. Vanessa is a proud graduate of South Salem High School, Georgetown University's School of Foreign Services, and University of Oregon School of Law. In 2020, Vanessa was appointed to the City Council to represent Ward 7 and was elected to the seat later that year. Vanessa is a proud dog mom, which I love hearing that. I'm a dog guy, and loves karate, traveling, cooking, and the great outdoors. And where else to enjoy the great outdoors better than the Northwest, I'll tell you. Welcome and thank you. Thank you. Jose Gonzalez. Councilor Gonzalez is married, father of 4, native Oregonian, son of Mexican immigrants. Worked as a farm worker until about 12 years of age, then worked with his father, who managed St. Joe's Shelter, a homeless farm worker shelter in Mount Angel, for about 20 years. Then he worked in fast food restaurants before entering real estate. Currently a small business owner of Tecasa Real Estate, and along with his family, La Familia Cider. This year, Jose is entering his 24th year in real estate and was appointed by the governor to the Oregon Real Estate Board in 2018. His passion is helping people support themselves through self-employment. Became a co-founder of the Latino Business Alliance in 2009, and as an advocate for immigrant entrepreneurs was invited to the White House. Oh, that's a sweet deal. I've never been to the White House, I'll tell you that. That'd be a neat trick. Jose also received the Salem Chamber Distinguished Service Award in 2014. And lastly, Jose recently began his first term as Salem City Council for Ward 5, covering most of Northeast Salem. Well, thank you all for being here again. We have got, like I said, a pretty full slate here. So what I would like to do is probably we should start off. Let me just back up for a second. We normally try and finish this thing right at 8:30. Boom, we're done. Today, what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and release the panelists around 8:25-ish, somewhere around there. And then for the rest of us, the members, we need to stay on, have a quick conversation about what we just learned, and then go from there. So I'm asking that people show a little grace and stay on for a few more minutes past the 8:30 mark if that's acceptable to everybody. Lastly, we forego the self-introductions. I would encourage people, if they want to throw their name and their phone number, their business, their email, whatever it is in the chat, you should feel free to do so. With that, Alicia, do you have a time schedule? Is that correct? What time do you have to be out of here?
I do, but I don't have to be out of here till 8. I can definitely go after Patty.
Okay, perfect. That is perfect. And Patty, Patricia, would you mind kind of giving us an overview and talk a little bit about the history of this and where it's come and where we're at today, and then
Sure.
we'll get other people to chime in. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Patricia Farrell. I'm going to share my screen and go, let's see, the host needs to let me share my screen. But I will give a brief overview of the process and where we are at this point. I don't know if Zach or Jeff, if you can let me share my screen.
Zach, I'm going to defer to you since I've never been a host.
Yeah, do you just want to make me host again, and I'll do all that real quick. I'm sorry, you guys.
It is early. I can relate,
is.
Jeff.
Thank you. At least someone can relate to my sore bones and brain.
Okay. You should have the privileges to do that now, Patricia.
Okay. Yes, I do. Okay. All right. Can people see my screen? Zach, can you give me a thumbs up if you can? All right, great. Yes, so I'm Patricia Farrell. Here's the beginning of the climate action plan. Why am I not able to move forward here? Okay, we'll do it that way. So just to set the background here, for those of you who haven't been fully following the process or understanding kind of where we're going, this began quite a few years ago with a priority from the City Council about addressing the Salem's greenhouse gas emissions. So one of the first steps was to determine where those emissions come from. So this study was done, this inventory, it's called, was done in 2019, and it's based on 2016 data. So it's a little bit out of date, I admit, but it gives you the general proportions of where our emissions from Salem originate. So you can see that the majority of them come from transportation. So that means the burning of gasoline in cars and buses and trucks. Then electricity is the next component, which is probably shown here as 26%. It's probably a little bit lower than that now. And then the next category of emissions is called stationary combustion. And that includes natural gas and propane sources. And then smaller proportions come from wastewater, which generates methane, and waste, which also can generate methane. So that's kind of the background of the sources of our greenhouse gas emissions. And so GHG, if I use that term, that means greenhouse gas. Okay, so I tend to fall into jargon sometimes. As we began this climate action plan, Council actually set these two goals, and they became the framework for the work that we did with our consultant Virtus Group. The first goal is to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 50% from those levels that I just showed you by 2035. And the second goal is to become carbon neutral, so basically zero emissions by 2050. And so those are both ambitious goals, but they did set the framework for the work that we're doing now in the climate action plan. So the plan, in addition to providing strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which is called mitigation, we also are preparing a lot of strategies related to preparing for dealing with the existing effects that we're already feeling from climate change. So those are called adaptation or resilience. And so there's two components of the plan. A lot of them are related. A lot of them have, absolutely no impact on GHG, but yet they might have a lot of impact on how we face these changes and these occurrences weather events. So just those two pieces. And then in addition, we have a long list of strategies. We are trying to prioritize those into some categories for implementation. And then you'll also see, I'll talk a little bit later, but we also have our key partners identified, because a lot of those, as you saw, were related to transportation and energy. And a lot are then also under the purview of the utilities, or partners such as Chariots will be key to implementing some of our strategies. So one of the first things we did was set up a task force. Several members of the group here are on the task force, as well as the three city councilors that are also in attendance today. This group was selected to represent a broad cross-section of the community, so that we have groups that aren't typically in task forces represented. So we have all that listed here on the side. You can see the different groups that are on the task force, and all of the meetings have been via Zoom, because pretty much as soon as we started this process, we had COVID hit. But it's been a pretty good process. I think there's been a lot of engagement. Every time we have a task force meeting, we also have a public activity on the website, on the site that people can participate in. They can also view the recordings of all the task force meetings. Those are all recorded and saved on the website. One of the other things that we did in the beginning of the action plan was to look at our vulnerability to climate change in Salem specifically. And Oregon State University has a lot of great information. They have a whole climate change center. And so we went through quite a detailed process of assessing our vulnerability to climate change. And this list shows what we will be facing or are experiencing now. I think we can all remember at least one of these events in the not too distant past. And so these are going to increase over the period of this action plan, which goes to 2050. These will all increase in duration and number of events. And so those have a lot of impacts on a variety of things, including the economy and public health. So as we began developing the strategies, it became clear that they could be grouped into these different buckets. So we have seven action areas you can see listed here on the left. And then under each one of those action areas, there's a variety of different strategies. A lot of these are very high level, meaning that if they are chosen to be implemented, that there might be other steps involved, such as, another cost benefit analysis, some more detailed research. Obviously, if there's any kind of ordinance or regulation, there would be public outreach and engagement around that. And so there's a lot of different steps that may occur in order to implement some of these strategies. But this gives you a sense on the right of just kind of the general gist of the strategies that are in those categories. The majority of them are in transportation and energy, because those are the ones that are going to reduce our GHG and get us to our goals. The other categories are more along the lines of the resilience and adaptation side of the plan. But you can see that a large percentage of the actions are related to trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled and try to get people to use public transit, trying to get public transit to be more affordable and more efficient and go to where people need to go. And then also to increase connectivity, so people are more inclined to walk or bike or take transit to their destination. So a lot of the actions are centered around those with transportation. Also switching over to electric vehicles is a big component, and expanding the electric vehicle charging network. I know that PGE is also working a lot on that as well. So then energy again is in addition to electric vehicles, it's solar. It's increasing energy efficiency in buildings, either by upgrading existing buildings or making sure that new buildings are as energy efficient as possible. And then also moving towards renewable energy So that's where natural gas comes in. And I know there's quite a bit of discussion about reducing the use of natural gas, but that is one of the strategies in the plan. The other categories you can see are more related to increasing our tree canopy, which is one of the ways we can actually sequester carbon and reduce our urban heat island effect. So that has a lot of benefits. And then creating resilient communities, being able to grow your own food, local food. And then also, the green economy. Can Salem take advantage of, as we move and transition in the future, can we take advantage of those by expanded job opportunities in the green economy? So if you go to the website, we have the draft plan posted now. It's open for public comment through tomorrow. Of course, we're also happy to take other comments that come in up until the council meeting on December 6th. But you'll see this chart. And so this is an example of what it would look like. So this is the energy page. So there's a code over here on the one side. And then there's the task or the strategy. Then each one has been ranked in these different ways. So we look at what is the potential for this strategy to reduce greenhouse gas? What is the cost to the city? Who is the lead agency? It might not be the city, it might be PGE. This is Energy Trust of Oregon. And then we've ranked them, we've assessed them based on these different co-benefits that are listed here. So it's environmental and public health, community equity, multimodal, transportation. And then we also have a suggested time frame. So based on the difficulty of beginning this, we have a short time frame, which is within the first 2 years. Then it goes 3 to 5, and then more than 5. We started with a longer time frame, but people said we need to have some early actions. So we tried to identify ones that we could begin early in the process. A lot of these, I will note, are also things that the state is working on. During the Climate Action Plan, the state has actually approved various bills that relate to the grid, the electric grid, EV charging. So a lot of those will just kind of fall into place as we implement those under state rules. We've also taken a lot of effort to do a lot of public outreach, even during times of COVID. Just a list of the various groups that we've had outreach to, radio shows, interviews, PSAs, and then all the different meetings that we've attended. So hopefully the word has been getting out. We were really also leaning on our task force members to get their connections, their groups involved and aware of this process. So where we are now, you can see the process we started with the different task force meetings. We're now in this final stage. After today's meeting, I have one more with the Human Rights Commission, and then it's going to council on December 6th for the approval of the plan. And here's the link to the plan. If people still want to take a look, it'd be great. I know your group has been active, seen lots of comments coming in over the last couple of days. And so people are aware of it and we are getting feedback. And so again, here's the December 6th meeting, public hearing. And then hopefully once the plan is approved, we can begin to address implementation. So with that, I will stop sharing, and I don't know if you wanted to take questions now.
I think what we'll probably do, just for sake of time, I think it would be good to hear from Alicia, and then as questions come in, it'll be in the chat, and I'll do my best to try and go back and monitor that and pay attention to that. And then I already received a few questions directly, but thank you, Patricia. I do have a question, but we'll circle back around. Alicia, good morning. Thank you for joining us. And let me, before I got to correct one thing. I made a mistake in reading. Vanessa, I said that she was into karate, and it was karaoke. Again, the mind, the mouth, not working as well as I wanted to in the morning. With that said, Alicia, thank you for attending and being here.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Doesn't look like I can.
Interesting. I will figure that out. You are a co-host, so you should have that.
Okay, I
ability.
see it now. I think did it wrong. So can you guys see my screen? I have a funny view from my side now. Yep.
Yes, thank you.
If I put it in presentation mode, are you guys gonna see it? Can you guys see it there?
Yes,
Is it in presentation mode?
Mm-mm. It's not.
How about that?
There we go.
Okay. I'm used to Teams. We use Teams. It's a new platform. Well, it's not a new platform, but it's a new what I'm used to on a day-to-day basis. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. My name is Alicia Traynor, and I'm the Environmental Policy Manager for Portland General Electric. Today, I'm going to discuss PGE's greenhouse gas reduction targets and the progress that we're making towards those targets and a clean energy future for all of our customers. Let me see. Did it flip?
Yes, it did.
Okay, thank you so much. So first, a little bit about PGE. PGE is proud to be Oregon's largest electricity provider, serving almost 50% of the state's population and about 75% of its commercial and industrial activity. We operate in 10 counties in Oregon, which includes 15 generation plants across the state and 11 community parks. We also have one facility in Washington state, and we're also a co-owner of a facility in Montana. The rest of our generation sits in Oregon. We are proud to be an Oregon headquartered employer, and we make a positive, we're a positive force on Oregon's economy. We have about just under 3,000 employees, and at any given time, we can have up to 1,000 contractors working for us. We provide family wage jobs, and we're the largest taxpayer in most of the counties that we have generation, and we're in the top 5 taxpayers for the counties in our service territory. We're also committed to the communities that we serve in Oregon. Our employees give about 45,000 hours of volunteer time to local nonprofits, and together with PGE and our PGE Foundation, we give about $3.5 million to schools, nonprofits, and communities, and those numbers are per year. So the energy landscape that we operate in is rapidly changing. Traditionally, our customers have wanted safe, reliable, and affordable to power. Today, customers also expect clean and increasingly carbon-free and resilient power. And we've heard loud and clear from our customers that the clean energy future is a priority, and we are committed to realizing this future. To reflect the urgency in addressing climate change and to meet our customers' desire to be served with clean energy and clean and renewable energy, PGE adopted new greenhouse gas reduction targets in November 2020. And these goals were codified in state law by House Bill or HB 2021 during the 2021 Oregon legislative session. And PGE was proud to be part of a broad coalition supporting the passage of HB 2021. And we are now looking forward to bringing that bill and the requirements of that bill to life. So in line with HB 2021, PGE will reduce the greenhouse gas emissions associated with the power served to its customers by 80% by 2030, by 90% by 2035, and then by 100% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2040 and every year thereafter. Along the way, we will continue to keep the essential electric service that our customers and communities rely upon reliable and affordable. And we're confident that working together with our customers and our communities, we can reduce emission and build Oregon's clean energy future together. So we will achieve these greenhouse gas reduction targets through a combination of PGE customer and community solutions. So first, we will invest in new renewable and non-emitting resources. Many of these actions are already in motion, and these includes the retirement of our Boardman coal plant at the end of last year, a little over a year ago. renewal of long-term contracts, power purchase contracts for carbon-free hydroelectric power, our Wheatridge renewable energy facility that is currently being constructed in Northeast Oregon, and customer-supported renewables. And I'm going to dig a little deeper into those last two about customer-supported renewables and our Wheatridge energy facility in a couple slides. And we also just released a request for proposal, an RFP, for almost 1,000 megawatts of new renewable and non-emitting resources. Plus, we will be investing, and we already are, investing in a smarter, more reliable and resilient grid so we can partner with our customers to reach this clean energy future. As an example, we just filed our inaugural distribution system plan that called for about 500 megawatts of customer-sided or distributed solar, plus increases in our flexible load and demand response programs, distributed storage, and resiliency projects. Together, all of these actions put us on the path to reaching our greenhouse gas reduction targets. So I mentioned that I was going to dig a little deeper. So first is our Wheatridge renewable energy facility. It is being constructed right now in Morrow County, Oregon, so very close to the coal plant that we just retired last year. This is the first large-scale renewable power facility in the United States to combine wind, solar, and battery storage in a single location. When fully constructed, its nameplate capacity is about 380 megawatts of emissions-free power. It'll be one of the largest solar farms in Oregon, and it'll actually be one of the largest battery storage facilities in the nation. And it'll power close to 100,000 homes. The wind portion of the facility is currently up and running, and the solar and storage are being constructed right now and should be operational soon. So in addition, we're also bringing on customer-enabled renewable resources. This is through our Green Future Impact Program, where we will be bringing on 2 of Oregon's largest solar farms in 2022. The output of one of these solar farms, it's about 160 megawatts, will be dedicated to 18 of our largest customers that will allow them to meet their own sustainability and climate action goals. And the city of Salem is one of those subscribers. The second facility, which again is also a solar farm being constructed in Oregon, will be about 138 megawatts. And this is being dedicated actually to just one customer to meet their entire load here in Oregon. This program and these facilities are a win for the participating customers, plus they're a win for PGE as they provide grid benefits and support the regional green economy and our state's decarbonization goals. And we are looking forward to expanding this program by about another 200 megawatts to meet our large customer demand for this program. So in addition to these large decarbonization moves, bringing on new renewable resources, retiring old fossil fuel resources, we are also partnering with our customers to realize this future. This slide provides a preview of some work in this area, including customer demand response programs, support for transportation electrification, goals, and customer-sided generation and storage projects. We could spend an entire presentation walking through each of these buckets, but I just wanted to kind of flash these up and let you know that we are not going to reach this future without partnering with our customers. So please reach out to Wendy or myself if you have any questions on this slide, because I'm really glancing over it or skipping through it fast, or any of the prior. But that's all I have for you today. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you, Alicia. There's been a couple little questions that have come in. I think what I'd probably like to do is move forward with Connor Wrighton's presentation from Northwest Natural, and then we'll have some Q&A with the counselors and kind of circling back around. So with that, Connor, if you wouldn't mind jumping in, that would be awesome. And
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so I don't have a presentation here for you today, but I'll just say a couple of words about this process and our appreciation for being a part of it. I've really appreciated the opportunity to be a part of the process, but I also think this process is something that speaks really highly to our community and our desire to do the right thing and to do our part to stem our greenhouse gas emissions and chip in and solve the global climate change problem that we collectively face. There are a number of things we can do with this to move it in the right direction. The significant majority of our emissions in Salem, for instance, come from the transportation sector. And I think by encouraging and enabling things like electric vehicle adoption, leading through example, Salem can move forward and set itself up to move into a new lower carbon future. Northwest Natural and I have been a very enthusiastic participant in this process, and we've offered a number of solutions to the city that would bring emissions from the natural gas sector to zero here in Salem. It's possible to do this. We've paved a path for Salem to get there in the very near future. And I won't go through the exhaustive list of things that we've proposed to the group to get us there. I'm happy to share them now. If anybody has any questions about that, I'm happy to go into them. But I'm really interested in getting to the Q&A section here. The natural gas section of this, I think, has been a really significant point of contention throughout this process. We are responsible for about 16% of the emissions that come in through the natural gas system in the city of Salem. And there are really two paths that we can take to address those emissions. One is to work to decarbonize the natural gas system, allow customers to keep and maintain their affordable equipment, and save money over time through continued access to a reliable energy system that is working to decarbonize as we speak today. We can expedite this with local programs that we have proposed that decarbonize the system here in Salem before anybody else in our service territory, and we've got a plan to help us get there. We have offered these types of solutions. The second is to slowly but surely remove energy choice from customers and to end the natural gas system here in Salem, regardless of the cost and of what that would do to the city. Unfortunately, this plan right now is proposing to do just that. The second highest recommendation on this report is to ban new hookups to the natural gas system and to eventually wind down the use of natural gas in the city of Salem. This is something that we are very opposed to. I think we've been as productive as we can a participant in this process, and I think that it's something that's entirely unnecessary to do. I think it's actually a very counterproductive measure when looking at greenhouse gas reductions. I'll just note, we have been serving our customers for 160 years in the state of Oregon. And we've done that not only because we've changed technologies over time, which we have, and we're proposing to do again, but also because we have listened to our customers. And I really want it to be known here that we know what our customers want from us. We know what they want across our service territory, and we know what they want here in Salem. We're very keenly aware of what they're looking for. And we have a challenge in front of us to decarbonize our system. They're asking us to do that, but they're also telling us that they really want natural gas. And so we're doing everything we can to continue to provide energy to our customers, be a good member of this community, and be a steward for our state. So looking forward to talking more about it and answering questions, and I appreciate the opportunity, Jeff.
Thank you, Connor. We are a little ahead of schedule here, which is a rare thing when I'm chairing a meeting. So I'd like to probably go back and look at a couple of the questions, if I could get back to that. For some reason, I'm struggling to find it. Here we go. There was a question, I believe, for Patricia. The question, can Patricia share how the scientists of the world are calculating the impact of battery manufacturing and replacement per industry standards? An EV battery lasts 7 years on average. Based on PMW electrical generation, it takes about 5 to 7 years for an EV to pass the threshold of environmental impact from manufacturing as compared to a combustion engine vehicle. At the time the battery is replaced, there is no reputable recycling program for this. The vehicle is just at the break-even point. I think that Ian, and you're welcome to jump in and articulate that question a little differently or however you want. But Patricia, go ahead, Ian. You're going to say something?
No, sorry, I was not. I was going to let you go, and then my 1-year-old decided to interject into the meeting this morning. So here I am. No, I think you stated the question very clearly, and then there was just some background that I had written behind that question that I've come up in my research that I'm struggling to understand this push for battery supported electrical grid and where there seems to be a void in the explanation of the impact of these batteries on our environment, the production of these batteries, and then the non-recyclable waste and toxic waste that's a byproduct of battery manufacturing. I still have yet to see any study that shows that there's a long-term benefit to that over continuing to just combust fuels.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Ian. Patricia, I'm not sure if you're the right person to address this or not.
I don't know. I just have anecdotal. I don't have anything specific that I could, but I'm wondering if PGE has anything related to batteries. I know we've heard this, and from what I've heard, it's that one of the things is that EV cars last a lot longer because they don't have all the moving parts necessarily, but I don't have a full study to address those specific questions, sorry.
Unfortunately, I'm not the person in PGE that would know the answer to that question. So Wendy and I can note it and go back to the internal folks. I know who to go to for that question, but unfortunately, I'm just not that person. So I don't want to give any misinformation.
Understood. And I did see Wendy feverishly writing, it looked like. So Wendy, thank you. Ian, we'll have to circle back around with an answer on that or some sort of insight. Next question, and again, this is to Patricia. When is the anticipated timeline for approval of the plan, the switch to implementation mode?
So the plan is going before City Council on December 6th at a public hearing. And at that point, we will ask them to approve the plan. When the plan is approved, then it will move into the implementation mode. So there are, and I know there was another question from Mike Erdman about the implementation priorities. And what we're going to do is we're putting those in the staff report rather than in the climate action plan itself, because it's kind of a working document. And so this, by having it as a specific list in the staff report, it'll make it easier for council to review and look at. And so several, as I mentioned, a lot of the implementation priorities are based on greenhouse gas, potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then also a lot of them are focused on what we're going to need to actually kind of set up a governance structure for the plan, a working group, address equity. And so there's kind of these going to be 5 different lists, because some of the things are already in play. Some of them are coming down from the state requirements. So we want to kind of break those out, because some of those are not necessarily things that the city council has control over, but some of them they do. So we're going to be looking for city council, once the plan is approved, to figure out the priorities of who is going to be implementing and how soon and how fast, and where does the money come from for implementation.
Okay, we have a couple hands up, couple questions. I do want to get to the city councilors as well and get some comments and feedback from them. But first, Sarah Duncan had your hand raised. I'm not sure if it was a question or comment, but if you want to unmute just real quickly. And
yes, thank you very much. So I work in garbage and recycling industry, and I can let you know on the side of batteries, that is a hot topic of discussion in our industry. There was recently a large merger between a couple of companies. I actually just found the article, and I'll drop it in the chat here shortly. But the cool thing about batteries in comparison to combustion is that there are significant parts of batteries that are recyclable. And the only reason that we have less of it than we would like to, it really comes down to infrastructure and the ability to create facilities, and the technology already exists. It's just a matter of putting the boots on the ground. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in there as far as the creation from scratch. It is it is resource heavy. In fact, so much that there are some talks about how long we could do it without recycling. So we would love to continue to be part of that conversation, and I'll drop the resources I have in the chat.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, we had Mike Erdman had a hand up for a comment or a question, and then we'll get to the city councilors. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I just kind of actually wanted to follow up on the question I posed to Patricia, which she just answered. I think we've got a bit of a transparency issue because in the city's public comment form on the website, we're inviting public comment through this Friday. And one of the options on that comment on the dropdown is that you can comment on Appendix 9, which is the priority strategy list, which has that gas ban at the top of the list. But yet it's the only appendix that the city is not making available to the public. So on one hand, we're saying you can comment on it. On the other hand, we're saying we're not going to show it to you. So I really think it's important the city gets out there and makes that strategy list available to the public on the website. Otherwise, it's just not very transparent.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. I duly noted. I will get it up there as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you, Patricia. Both Sarah and Mike, your hand is still raised. If you want to remove that, that would be great. That way I'm not tracking something I don't need to. With that, I'd like to just kind of get some insights from the counselors and kind of their position on this climate action plan. And it's been mentioned a couple times now, the elimination of Northwest natural gas. And so I just kind of like to circle through. Let's start with Councilor Anderson, please.
Thank you very much, Jeff. First of all, I really want to thank everybody who participated in the Climate Action Task Force. We had a number of meetings. As Patricia noted, there were people are in this room right now, this virtual room that participated. We needed to get as big a community involvement from as wide a spectrum of people as we can, and I think we did that. And I will also say that in general, we all have the same goals. They're just potentially different methods of reaching those goals. There's been two different questions that Zachary has sent me about various things. And one of them is so I'll just respond to those briefly. One is what prompted the city to do this, the climate action plan, and that's an easy answer. Just look around you, both in our environment here in the Salem area and also in the country, and seeing what's happened. The other is what are the vital strategies that I think are important, and I think the main big issue here is 53% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from transit, and that's what we really need to look at. Benefits to the business community was another question that Zachary asked me. And I'll tell you that in general, the benefits to the business community are going to be the same as the benefits to the entire community. But as well, there's a real economic opportunity here for green building, for more dense housing, for building that is related to modes of transportation different than the single occupancy vehicle. Then there was a question about what was the biggest surprise, and I would have to say that the biggest surprise for me was the emanations from buildings, and that's included in the natural gas emanations. Then a question was, what is the easiest of the various strategies? And I would say in general, the easiest of the various strategies are the natural resource ones. Plant more trees, get more open space. Those are things that can be fairly easily done at fairly low cost. Then what is the biggest obstacles I see? These are the questions from Zach, and the first one is the single occupancy vehicle. That's just a real concern, and the number of trips that are taken that end up contributing the majority of the 53% of transportation. And the thing we need to do is people need to be educated, and I agree with Mike Erdman that we need to be as transparent as possible in that education, because if we're going to bring the public along on this, they have to be convinced that we're in a crisis, and we are in a crisis. And I would say that it's vital for everyone in this room to read the executive summary and the introduction in the climate action plan, because they provide an accurate synopsis of what we as a city, what our state, what our country, and what the world face. And the relatively dire, well, not relatively, the dire consequences if we don't take some action. This is a crisis that must be faced. It's going to end up, as I've said in all the transportation meetings, it's going to end up with some hard, difficult choices that are going to have to be made, both by the city and the council, but also by individuals. It's going to end up in some sacrifices that need to be made by all segments of society, and they must be made. And we've got to start taking action now. Now, the council is going to use this report and the plan and the strategy analysis, exhibit 9 or attachment 9 that we haven't seen yet, but we're going to look at that as a starting point for discussions. And I really, and I know the other councilors join me in this, we really invite everyone's participation in this. And yes, the public comment is closed for the staff recommendation tomorrow, but there will be comment on the plan that will be certainly available at the for people to make, both in email and by testimony at the council meeting when we consider this. So that's another time when you should have all the information you need. And please come and give us your opinion, because we need to move forward with this, and we need to do it with the broadest level of support we can. We've got to do something about this crisis. And I applaud the city and everybody here who was involved in the Climate Action Task Force, because that's what we're going to do, folks. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Nordic, would you like to just jump in and give some thoughts, perspective of the process? And I know that you were provided some questions, and maybe you can address those as well.
Sure. As I understand it, I was supposed to go after Councilor Gonzalez, but I'm happy to go whenever called upon. Good morning, everyone. It is great to see you all. It's good to be back at the chamber remotely, as it were. Before I go to the questions that were sent to me in advance, I do want to piggyback on some earlier comments about transparency. I certainly agree with that and would expect all of our strategies to be made publicly available as soon as possible. So I take Ms. Farrell at her word when she says that she will do so. So thank you very much, Mr. Erdman, for pointing that out. And I also want to remind folks that I was very pleased to see that our mayor had appointed members of the Chamber of Commerce to serve on this task force, so that the chamber's voices and perspectives can be a part of this process and literally be in the room when it happens in terms of the task force meeting. So I appreciate the chamber members who have served on this task force and been a part of this process from the get-go. And last but not least, as many of you are perhaps already aware, we have had opportunities for public comment throughout this process. All of our meetings have been streamed online. We put out a community survey, and there have been multiple opportunities for input. And I welcome this as one of many of those opportunities. So one of the questions I was asked for was, how has an equity-based lens been used when proposing these strategies? And first of all, I appreciate the chamber even asking the question, because it's an important question that must be asked, and recognizing that is something that I appreciate. And I also want to commend the chamber for your efforts to recognize many of our businesses in the community owned by persons of color, our women-owned businesses, and much more. Thank you so much for celebrating the diversity within our business community. It does not go unnoticed, and I sincerely appreciate all your efforts to support and uplift all business owners and people engaged in business in our city. So in terms of our equity lens for this committee, for this task force, I can tell you that we have set up meetings and presentations with numerous groups, such as the Salem Kaiser NAACP, the Micro Asian Islanders community, the Salem Kaiser Interfaith Network, and the Salem Leadership Foundation community partnership teams. That is in addition to several other forums where we made an effort to reach people on their networks. For example, publishing information on our 2 local Spanish-speaking radio stations, El Rey and Radio Poder. We have also circulated information in a local newspaper published by the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. We have published content on our Spanish language city website. We circulated our survey earlier this year in Spanish as well as English. We also met with Enlace, and we also held a Generation Z forum with our city youth outreach and education coordinator. I'm also pleased to report that we've had representation on the council from one of our community partners who works with people who are without shelter. As many of you may recall, we've had horrific wildfires, we've had smoke issues in the city, we've had power outages, we've had ice storms, we've had extreme heat. So nobody experiences that more than the unsheltered community who have no place to go indoors to fend for themselves away from the elements. So that's just an overview of some of the things that we have done to reach a variety of communities. The next question that I was asked to address was which strategies are most vital to reaching the city's goals by 2050? That's a great question, and it's a tough question. But as we know, most of our emissions here locally are from driving. So what I would like to do is continue to incentivize telecommuting and doing the kinds of things we're doing right now, which is meeting by Zoom. I just got off 2 back-to-back jury trials, and all of our witnesses in the first trial appeared remotely by Zoom or some other web-based platform. The second trial, about half of them appeared remotely. It worked out just fine. So I'm a big believer in embracing this aspect of our pandemic lifestyle, which is doing everything that we can to support telecommuting as appropriate. That is a very simple way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and also to reduce traffic and commuting costs in our area. Now, another key strategy that I'm very much in support of is increasing our sidewalk network. And that's something that my residents in Ward 7 have made abundantly clear to me. A lot of South Salem, if you live in South Salem, then you know that many of our neighborhoods were built without sidewalks. And I have a lot of young parents who want to be able to walk with their kids, pushing the stroller down to their local grocery store, their local bakery, down to the local park. But because there aren't sidewalks and because they're concerned about their young ones, they will drive even short distances just to ensure the safety of their children. So there are a number of places where I know that my residents, my constituents are very interested in sidewalks and other forms of safe crossing so that people can literally walk to get their daily bread. If they want to go do a potluck with some neighbors on a couple blocks down or more, it's nice to have sidewalks for that sort of thing. Sidewalks are not cheap, however. So that brings me to another point that I want to make clear. I'm studying very carefully, and I encourage you all to do the same, the cost-benefit analysis for a lot of the strategies that are being put forth. I see, for example, the cost-benefit analysis for things like a gas tax or something that I'm concerned by. You'll see that one of the proposed strategies is a gas tax. And frankly, anytime a new tax is under consideration, I think it's extremely important to proceed with caution and not jump to conclusions. It's very important to assess the cost-benefit analysis of such taxes as well. I appreciate the intention of trying to get people to drive less, but one of the concerns that I have about a gas tax is that it can have unintended consequences on some of our folks who have to drive to work. Telecommuting is fine for white-collar employees like me. Anywhere I've got a stable Wi-Fi connection and a laptop, I can do my job literally anywhere. I now know this to be true. But our grocery cashiers, our gas attendants, our restaurant staff, our hotel staff, our landscapers, these people are not getting, these folks do not make a lot of money. And I'm concerned about how a gas tax could disproportionately impact low-income families across the city, harming their ability to create a college fund for their children, fund a savings account, start a retirement account, etc. So I appreciate the intention, and I'm all in favor of finding ways to incentivize people to drive less, but I'm on the fence as terms of whether this is actually the best way to go about doing it. So some of the other strategies that I'm very much interested in looking at is, for example, increasing public transit, certainly a fan of that. Supporting energy efficiency and weatherization for lower income households, for small business owners. What can we do to incentivize these folks? We know that if you're starting a new business, you're running a new business in the era of the pandemic, every dollar counts. What can we do to provide incentives? I really appreciate the fact that through things like our urban renewal areas, we provide grant and matching opportunities for local businesses who are within the URAs. I think that those are the kinds of incentives we can do to help locally grown businesses thrive, even under difficult circumstances. So I appreciate everyone's feedback and comments. Please keep it coming. But I will now yield my time to my peer on council, Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you, Vanessa. Councilor Gonzalez, at your convenience.
Thank you, Jeff. Good to see everybody today. You know, things always get really tight at the end of a process. And that's what you're seeing today. You know, this session today was timely. Thanks, Zachary and the Chamber for the invitation. And this is a time. This is a time that, you know, we need people to step up and share their support, concerns, share their voice. That's my job as a counselor, so I'm speaking on behalf of the people. I'll sort of frame my thoughts around the questions that I was sent. And the first one I think is an important one. It says, do you think regulatory policies will help achieve the climate action goals more than incentive-based approaches? If yes or no, why not? You know, in my life experience, if it's not a win-win-win, it just doesn't last. And you're fighting uphill. You know, especially as I look at the residents of Northeast Salem, like Councilor Nordic mentioned, they have very little wiggle room in what they can do with their lives. They do the jobs that can do them through Zoom are doing. So if we're not enabling, helping them in their lives through this process, then really what we're starting to do is starting to push people out. I just heard my son talking about his friends. They had to switch a gym because of a $10 increase. And sometimes we forget that, you know, and even though it's a few dollars here and there as a community, it's a lot of money that gets taken out in their ability to build wealth for generations. It's what my community needs. We still need those opportunities for us. Now, as far as some of the strategies that I think are going to work are the ones that engage people, save them money, and actually reduce the amount of energy we use. The weatherization. I think the weatherization is a great strategy. It's an impact on the people and the families, because when I don't know if anybody's gone through that process, but they actually come into your home and they do this assessment, and it starts to show where the energy in your house, how it flows and how it's wasted. So I think that one right there is a great strategy, because it's fixed once it happens. You know, it's the benefits are there long term, especially for low-income renters and small businesses. Another strategy is a tree canopy. That one to me is really exciting because it gets kids involved. It's something simple everybody can get involved in doing, and we need it in Northeast Salem. It makes, you know, there's some streets and they're just tree lined. You know, I think that it's beautiful. We need more of that. Growing trees capture carbon, and it's proven that the more trees in the neighborhood, the cooler it is during those hot times. So there's those hot spots around town, and it's where there aren't trees. You know, so that one to me is one of the ones I'm looking forward to seeing. And then of course finishing the sidewalks. I don't live too far from Hawthorne Road, where a small child was killed about 5, 6, 7 years ago walking to school because there's no sidewalks, and it's a major street. So if we're expecting people to walk and bike, We can't do that. We can't ask them to do that if we don't even give them any safe options. Now with those three strategies, those are the ones that excite me the most because you'll be able to see the real results locally. And something that I hear often, is things have to be done at a high level only. That's the only way this is going to work. And I think that's wrong because we need more people involved. We need more people aware of these, of the impact of how we live our lives. So even though us educating a 10-year-old on planting a tree is good for the environment, what you're actually doing is you're creating someone that's caring about the globe in the future. And the more of those people we have, I think the better. Right? And I point to a program that many of you know. It was the Keep Oregon Green campaign. And when I was in elementary school, I remember how they engaged us, they taught us, they made us aware. And, that sort of changed my life and the way I see Oregon. So I thought, yeah, let's not throw garbage on the street. Let's take care of let's recycle when we can. Let's learn as much as we can to reduce our usage. And that changed me. And that's why I'm here today, because I actually care about my community. I care about the environment. I care about the people. And I just don't want to see people being pushed out, because what we're doing is fighting instead of helping each other in finding the win-win strategies. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. We have a lot of questions that have popped up, so it's a good time to transition. Alan, I see that your hand is up here, and I saw that you had a comment. So give me just 1 second. What I'm hearing a lot of is, and I just want to be really clear, make sure that I'm hearing it correctly, is that this plan is looking to eliminate gas from Salem residents. And I just want to be clear if I'm reading that or hearing that correctly from the counselors, and if so, if that is the supported thought process from each of the counselors to eliminate a potential utility from Salem residents at some point in the future and starting that path. So if I could just get kind of a quick answer from each of the counselors, if I'm misunderstanding that, that would be appreciated. Councilor Anderson, please.
Thank you very much. You've got to remember that what this is, we asked the consultant and the task force to come up with a potential plan for us to reach our goals. So the task force isn't really recommending anything. They're just saying, if we want to achieve the goals, there's this thing can be done, this thing that, and the other thing that can be done. And so the natural gas issue is one of them. And the report actually talks about, there's two ways to look at it: just ban it and make everybody convert, which I don't think any counselor would support, and it just is, it's a foolish idea. But that was one of the things they said: if we want to get to our 2050 goal, this is a way to do it. Are we going to do that? No. The real issue relates more to ban on future construction. And that's one of the recommendations that came to the council. And that's one of the reasons why I met yesterday with two people who are here, Mr. Erdman and Mr. Hofford, to discuss that very thing. And so I know that all the councilors are going to be, we'll have a chance to interact with everybody about this particular issue. But just because the plan says this is one way to do it doesn't mean that we are going to do it. Council will make their decision based on public input and based on our view of what the situation is.
Thank you. Councilor Nordic or Gonzalez, any additional input or thoughts there?
No, I second what Councilor Anderson said. We've received a wide variety of ideas, proposed strategies from all members of the community, business organizations, environmentalists, and everyone in between. There are a lot of strategies that are being presented to the council for consideration. And it's up to the council, once we receive that proposal, to decide what actually makes sense for our city. So we welcome your input throughout this process and into the future.
And Jeff, just my 2 cents is yeah, the outright ban is just, it's difficult because I can't see the dominoes that start to fall once that happens locally. And I don't know how many extra people would have passed away with that ice storm, so I would not want to take that away from some people.
Yeah, I agree that ice storm was kind of an eye opener for all of us. It does pose a question to me, Councilor Anderson. I'll circle right back around to you. Just the comments there make me kind of think of when Councilor Anderson says not a ban, but in the future for construction. It kind of takes me down a path of, okay, what does that look like for not just residential, but commercial? I'm a commercial real estate broker. There's a handful of us on the call as well. And I start to think of these big buildings, whether it be a government body in downtown Salem or a school, a new school that requires gas in the future for boilers and to heat the school. I guess I look at all these giant buildings, even though it's not banned. I don't know what the economic impact of something like that would be in the future to say, you cannot have gas. That seems like a question. And Mike, I'm probably going to circle around to you in just a minute. If maybe, I don't know if you have, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Mike, but it makes me kind of start processing that a little bit. Before we do that, Mike, I do want to circle back to Tom. You had your hand up, but then I need to get to Alan Rasmussen as well.
Thank you. In any sort of political situation or governmental situation, one always ends up with some sort of compromise. So in fact, in my view, oftentimes the best compromise is one where each of the many sides of the situation are a little bit unhappy. Having said that, there are a couple things to look at here. I'm not saying I support the ban. I'm just saying I want to hear what you folks have to say. That is the future ban. But there are a couple ways to look at it. One is some sort of gradual implementation as opposed to boom, it's the ban starts tomorrow. The other way to look at it is there potentially could be exceptions for some industries. I'm thinking particularly of the food industry in terms of natural gas is what most restaurants and food industries operate on. And so there can certainly be a bunch of carve outs. And so this is the sort of stuff that the council is going to be discussing in the coming months and years. And that's why we want all your input. It's not a binary choice, up or down, east or west, north or south. It's something that we all need to talk about. And it may be that we end up with a binary choice of saying we're not going to ban anything. It may, and maybe we end up with some compromise. So we just have to continue to work with everybody to see what we can come up with, which is a viable situation to help address the climate crisis and a viable situation to help address the economic benefits to the community.
Thank you. Alan, I apologize for the wait. And I just want to say before, Alan, you jump in, there's about 37 comments, questions that I'm trying to sift through. So just bear with me, if you will. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get through all of them, but I think that it's best that we try and capture those and get some answers and be able to provide that to this group. That said, Alan, please go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, just real quick. I appreciate all the hard work that's been done on this, the collaborative effort, but I find it very problematic. So I'm going to ask a request of the counselors. I find it very problematic. You put in all this hard work and appendix to be viewed by anybody in the general public. I've seen pieces of it being on the chamber board and connected to some of the people that have been on that task force. But a lot of people I invited onto this call today have never seen that. And I think it's very problematic at best that you're asking for public comments back on a plan that people actually can't even read the details of. So my request to the counselors is that you need to push this back a month and allow people to actually access that document, read that, digest that, and give you actually good, thorough feedback if that's what you truly want in public comments back regarding this plan.
Thank you, Ellen, and I would second that. Not that you asked my opinion. Quick question. I'm going to try and get through these as quick as possible. Now I'm up to 41. Has any economic impact ROI study been completed or published? Patricia, that's probably a question for you or the consultant that you're working with. Again, as in any economic impact ROI study been completed?
We have done a cost benefit analysis of 10 strategies. And it was a very thorough analysis of all the different costs and benefits for those particular ones, but we did not do them for every single strategy. That would be a huge undertaking. What will happen is once the counselors decide on which actions to consider implementing, then some of those might require a more detailed cost benefit analysis at that point, because as was noted in the chat, what we assessed in the strategy list is just the cost to the city. And so we did not take into account what would the impacts be to individual businesses or to homeowners, because that was too large an undertaking for this particular project. But that is certainly something that can happen for some particular strategies if they move forward.
Thank you. Mike, I see your hand is up, and I just want to make sure I get to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've got concerns about a potential ban on gas. You know, housing costs would go up pretty significantly. We're looking at national estimates that fully electrifying would really increase cost of construction up to about $12,300 per house. I mean, it's a pretty significant impact. If you let me know, I've got a question for probably the PGE folks. And it's actually a concern I've got, and I'm wondering if banning natural gas installs would actually raise GHG emissions in the short term. You know, because of course, if we shift away from gas, we're shifting energy generation to electricity. And knowing that kind of PGE's largest generation source is the gas-fired power plants, you know, it's going to be a number of years before PGE can really fully transition away from those gas plants and into renewables. And so knowing, I guess, that PGE is adding as much as they can in terms of wind and solar right now, wouldn't this additional load placed on PGE's system have to come from gas generation? And with gas generation of power being a lot less efficient than actually burning gas in a modern furnace in the home or the business, doesn't that really stand the chance of actually increasing GHG emissions in the short term as we burn gas to produce electricity? So that's a question for PGE. I'm not sure if anybody here has got the technical expertise to answer that.
Hi, Mike. This is Wendy. Alicia had to get off the phone, but what I can say is that from a PGE perspective, with the new load associated with building this electrification movement, as a fully regulated utility in Oregon, PGE has a process called the integrated resource planning, and Alicia talked about it a little bit in the sense that this IRP really informs how and when new resources are acquired to ensure that we have the electricity to meet our customers' needs. And she talked about the RFP that just went out for more renewable. And so through this kind of planning process and the data and the analysis that's done and customer informations and projections that we get and trends, as well as we incorporate energy efficiency adoption rates to help forecast the use and our demand over the next 20, 30 years, that we provide. I mean, that really helps us in planning for the future. And we're looking at it not from a 5 and 10 year, we're looking at 20 and 30 year. And again, looking at the trends in terms of the adoption rate, because it's one thing, and I think that's something really important, the timing of it. It's one thing to adopt any particular strategy, and then there is the implementation and timing of it. And then when folks change lifestyles or make the investments or have access to resources to make the investments. So that's why we monitor that closely, incorporate that into our planning. And so from overall, that helps us, again, plan for the future. And so PGE is always monitoring it and ready to meet our customers' needs in that way. And certainly from a PGE perspective, renewables, taking advantage of renewables is high in our planning process. And Alicia, again, talked about some of the things that we're doing. So if you want a more specific answer, I'm happy to address that and send that to Tom and to share it with everybody. But we are looking at all this. We're looking at EVs, we're looking at water heaters, we're looking at all of these kind of different electrification appliances. We're looking at energy efficiency. And Alicia talked about some of like that long list that she provided. There's so much behind that. So all of that is being considered in our planning. And then that's when we, after review and acknowledgement from the OPUC, that is when you see the kinds of things that we're doing today, which is going out for RFP for new renewables.
I think
into
that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to kind of summarize a little bit of what Wendy was saying, and your point is if there was action taken that more dramatically impacted how much comes off the gas system and onto the electric system, in essence, what does that mean? We would have to look at those numbers pretty carefully because it could be a pretty significant load addition. And as Wendy is saying, we have a lot of different data points in play to figure out when does that happen, how would it happen, what would we need to be prepared for. So that maybe is a little short, but it would impact, along with many other things, how we project. Yes.
Yeah, I just hope that the city, as they move forward, maybe working with the Vertis Group, who is the consultant on the climate action plan, can look at that, because it just seems that if we're going to place that additional load, in a electrical environment where we're not entirely renewable, that's got to come from gas. And so really, we're not reducing emissions; we're just shifting it from one utility to the other. So something the city should consider.
And I don't think we can make the assumption that the load gets shifted to gas, Mike, either. Because we have, as Alicia noted, that we have state law requirements that we will meet. And so I definitely want to make that clear that doesn't mean that we're going to shift to natural gas.
Thank you. Connor, you have your hand raised. I just wanted to throw one little thing out, maybe to Wendy. It would be good to get an ROI or some sort of idea if there's this shift that is proposed. What does it cost to produce these renewable, whether it be wind or solar, and how long does it take to kind of a break even on that, as opposed to using gas as a main source of energy from your guys' perspective? Me just thinking out loud. Connor, you had your hand raised, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I want to add a little bit to that. And, as an energy observer in the region, beyond just being a natural gas utility, I will say that, we are very fortunate as a region to have PGE serving Oregon. They are one of the cleaner utilities around the nation. And I think the investments in the hydro system have been a huge advantage for our region that most around the country do not have. So as we look at what we have to do to get from point A to point B, they have, like we have, committed to decarbonizing over time. And we know that over time, if we are going to eliminate the natural gas sector and fold it into the electric system, we have to double the size of the electric generation and transmission system in order to cover that. And the hydro system that has been such an asset to our electric industry over the last 100 or so years does not scale like that. So that the next 100% that you have to get to, in addition to other load growth issues, has to come from somewhere else. And so, it may not come necessarily from natural gas, but I think that we are definitely making the road a lot harder to decarbonizing as a region, and for the city to come in and say, look, we're not going to force you off of your natural gas today, but the next time you go buy a new home, or the next time you want to go open a business, or the next time you want to go do this, it's not going to be available to you, it's going to be 100% electrified. That makes it that much harder for us to get to our regional goals. And not only that, we're putting all of these cost implications on members of, or on our community. We're telling people within the city of Salem, this is not something that you can have access to. I know it costs less. I know, you just can't have it anymore. And not only that, you have to use this other resource, and we're assuming that that is going to decarbonize at the rate that we hope it will, and that our actions aren't going to unintentionally make it more difficult for that to happen. So, I would just caution the city, against this action, because there are a lot of things. Again, I mentioned it earlier, that we have proposed that can get saved. Again, this is 16% of the emissions in the city of Salem. We take those very seriously. We have proposed things that can get rid of those things before, in time for the city of Salem's stated goals. We can do this. We can do it more affordably. We can do it without interrupting people's lifestyles in the city of Salem. And I think that that we have not done nearly enough to talk about, what's the negatives or the positives associated with banning gas hookups. This is the whole conversation. We haven't spent any time throughout this entire process really looking into what would it look like to decarbonize the natural gas system. And I think that unless we actually look at what all of our options are, I don't think we've come even close to considering what this could mean for Salem and what our true options are here. So I think there's a lot of process we have left to have.
Thank you, Connor. I'm trying to be really sensitive to everyone's time here. We need to probably have a discussion, and I'm going to look to Zachary and Tom. We have a lot of comments. 51 is what I have. There are some really good ones that I have failed to get to, and I want to personally apologize to everyone on the call that I have not been able to get to as many questions as I really hoped to. Zachary, are we able to capture that and send that out so we can get some answers for people? I think it's really important.
Absolutely. I can do that right after the call.
Okay, thank you. That said, it is 8:27. We're a little bit behind schedule. Is there a way that we can just keep some people on, have a conversation, and with the chamber members? Is that possible,
Yeah,
Zachary?
Let me jump in there. We need to excuse our speakers. First of all, thank you very much to our city councilors, to Connor, Wendy, and the PGE team and the Northwest Natural team. You've done a great job through this process. Councilor Nordic, Councilor Anderson, and Councilor Gonzalez, very much appreciate you being on this call. We recognize how often you are requested to be at meetings, and very much this organization values your time and talents. So with that, we can excuse those 5 individuals. If you are a non-member of the Salem Chamber that is on, we would ask also that you depart. And Patricia, from the staffing perspective at the city, thank you for guiding us through the process, and we'll allow you to be excused as well.